Imagine taking like a great white shark, right? You pull it out of the ocean and you put it into this perfectly heated 72-degree tank.
Right, a totally controlled environment.
Exactly. And you hand feed it filet mignon every single day. There are no predators, no changing tides, absolutely no need to hunt. What actually happens to that apex predator?
Well, I mean, it doesn't thrive, that's for sure.
Yeah, within months, it becomes completely lethargic. Its muscles atrophy, it gets weak, it gets sick, and ultimately its lifespan is drastically cut short. And today, we are exploring the biological reality that you, listening right now, you are that shark. Your comfortable modern lifestyle is that tank. And this relentless pursuit of convenience is actively destroying your cellular health. So welcome to the deep dive.
It's a profound analogy and honestly a pretty unsettling one, but biologically speaking, it is entirely accurate. We are unpacking a massive biological roadmap today. We're dissecting a rapid-fire, highly scientific Q&A session with health and human biology expert Gary Brecka. And the mission here is to really strip away the marketing, the noise, and all that modern conditioning so we can look at the unfiltered mechanics of human health.
Exactly, because if you scroll through your phone right now, you are just being bombarded. I mean, it's endless Instagram ads selling you miracle powders, 30-day quick fixes, and these violently dogmatic diet cults where people are literally screaming at each other over whether, like, a carbohydrate is a sin.
Oh, it's exhausting.
It is. As someone who is just trying to feel decent throughout the day, navigating that is a nightmare. So today, we are tackling everything from the real mechanics of fat loss and hidden cellular toxins to the highly controversial truth about cholesterol and the whole supplement industry.
And we desperately need a roadmap like this because that noise, it's actively harming people. We need to cut through the dogma and extract actionable, science-based steps. The ultimate goal of this deep dive is to give you the specific tools to become the most resilient, optimized version of yourself. But it really starts with a complete paradigm shift regarding how we view the aging process itself.
Okay, let's unpack this because the definition of aging presented in this material, I mean, it hit me like a physical blow. Aging is defined, simply and brutally, as the aggressive pursuit of comfort.
It's a brilliant framing, isn't it?
Yeah, it totally shifts how you think about it.
Right, because when you look at the underlying biology here, you realize that the human body absolutely requires stress to adapt, to repair, and to thrive. It relies on this biological concept known as hormesis.
Hormesis. Okay, break that down for us.
So hormesis is a biological phenomenon where a beneficial effect results from the exposure to low doses of an agent that is otherwise toxic or lethal at higher doses.
Okay, so kind of like exercise.
It's exactly like exercise. When you lift weights, you are literally tearing muscle fibers. It is a stressor. It causes damage. But the body overcompensates during the repair process, which makes you stronger.
Right. But modern life is essentially a full-scale campaign to eliminate all of those stressors.
Exactly. When we constantly seek physical ease, when we demand perfect 72-degree temperature control in our homes and our cars, when we avoid any real physical exertion.
We're building the tank.
We're building the tank.
Right.
When we opt for the absolute easiest, most readily available hyperpalatable calories, we are starving ourselves of the very stress signals they require to stay resilient.
Wow.
We literally turn off the genes responsible for longevity and cellular cleanup. By eliminating the struggle, we don't preserve our bodies. We actually accelerate our own cellular decay.
We've built the ultimate human zoo for ourselves, and we just call it convenience. And I'd argue the most dangerous exhibit in the zoo, by far, is the food trough.
The food trough is definitely where the most insidious damage occurs. But what's really fascinating here is how the data contradicts popular culture. When you look at blue zone studies, which are the areas with the longest living people, right?
Right. They analyze the dietary habits of populations around the world with the highest concentrations of centenarians, people living past 100. And what you find is that dogmatic dieting is completely absent.
Which is wild, because people will fight to the death in the comment sections over their specific diet label. You have the carnivore crowd, the keto zealots, vegans, paleo purists.
Yeah, it's intense.
But the data shows none of those specific labels individually act as the secret key to extending life.
Right. It's not the macro label that matters at all. The single most important dietary rule, according to the overwhelming consensus of longevity data, is simply eating whole foods and ruthlessly avoiding highly processed foods.
So like the perimeter of the grocery store. Exactly. We are talking about avoiding anything that comes in a crinkly package with a long list of ingredients that read like a chemistry textbook, or things you physically cannot find growing in the dirt or roaming the earth.
Okay, I have to stop you there, though, because this completely breaks my brain based on what we've been taught for, well, decades. Let's talk about veganism for a second.
Okay.
We've spent the last 20 years being told by every major health documentary that a plant-based diet is the absolute ultimate holy grail of longevity and health. Are we really saying that just because someone is avoiding animal products, they aren't inherently healthy?
It is a massive misconception. And honestly, one of the worst pieces of nutrition advice out there is the assumption that the absence of meat automatically equals the presence of health.
Right.
Now, a strictly whole food vegan diet can absolutely be healthy for some individuals, but the reality of modern veganism is quite different. You can be a strict vegan and survive entirely on beer, French fries, Doritos, and high fructose corn syrup.
Oh, man, the junk food vegan.
Yeah, none of those contain animal products.
It's so true. You go to the grocery store and you see all these plant-based alternatives. You pick up one of those fake meat non-burgers and you flip it over to read the label. It is a literal science experiment.
We're real here.
It's chemically laden, full of synthetic dyes, artificial fillers, chemical preservatives, and highly processed thickening agents like carrageen.
Yeah.
Just because it didn't come from a cow doesn't mean your body's enzymes have any idea how to break down those synthetic compounds.
Precisely. And this is why highly processed ingredients, especially things like high fructose corn syrup and seed oils, are so destructive. We have to look at the mechanism here. They don't actually feed our cellular biology.
So what do they do?
Instead, they act as endocrine disruptors. When you consume highly processed sugar, you aren't just getting empty calories. You are triggering a massive, completely unnatural spike in insulin.
And that insulin spike sets off a whole chain reaction.
A disastrous one, yeah. It wrecks your hormonal balance. It alters your cortisol rhythms, which keeps you awake at night, completely destroying your sleep architecture.
Which we'll definitely get into later.
Oh, absolutely. It also causes systemic inflammation, which leads to massive water retention, that puffy, inflamed feeling people get. It induces neuroinflammation, which you experience as brain fog, ruining your focus. And perhaps most frustratingly, for people who are actually trying to put in the work at the gym, these processed foods cause a complete lack of response to exercise.
Wait, explain that. How does eating a processed food stop my workout from working?
Well, because exercise is the stressor,
Right.
but the recovery is where the adaptation actually happens.
Ah.
If you are fueling that workout with highly processed inflammatory garbage, your body is so busy dealing with the systemic inflammation and the oxidative stress from those chemicals that it cannot properly allocate resources to repair your muscle tissue or adapt your cardiovascular system. You are essentially stepping on the gas and the brakes at the exact same time.
Wow. So the baseline non-negotiable rule is a diet devoid of processed foods. Whole foods only. If it didn't grow from the ground or have a mother, think twice.
Exactly.
But adopting that lifestyle requires stepping out of that aggressive pursuit of comfort. Because grabbing a packaged granola bar on your way out the door is incredibly easy. Cooking a whole food breakfast requires actual conscious intention.
It requires deep intention.
Yeah.
And if you want to rewire your biology, that intention has to start the absolute second you open your eyes in the morning.
Which brings us to the morning routine. If comfort is the enemy, how exactly should we be jolting our bodies out of that comfort zone? The material we're diving into lays out a very specific, almost aggressive morning primer called the 30-30-30 method.
This is a phenomenal protocol. It was originally popularized by Tim Ferriss and heavily emphasized in our roadmap today. The protocol itself is straightforward. 30 grams of protein consumed within 30 minutes of waking up, immediately followed by 30 minutes of steady-state cardiovascular exercise.
Okay, I have to ask the logistical question here, because I know you, listening to this, are probably having the exact same reaction I did. How on earth do I eat 30 grams of protein the second I open my eyes?
It's tough for a lot of people.
Yeah, my stomach is asleep. I am barely awake enough to find the coffee maker, let alone grill a chicken breast at 6 in the morning.
It is a very common hurdle, but it's easily solved with the right whole food choices. You don't have to eat a heavy steak. You could have 3 to 5 scrambled eggs. You could mix in some raw goat cheese, raw dairy being highly bioavailable. A hearty serving of whole-fat, unsweetened Greek yogurt or raw cottage cheese easily hits that macro requirement.
Okay, that sounds more manageable. But if you are someone who physically gags at the thought of solid food before 8 a.m., there's an alternative mentioned in the source called perfect aminos.
Yes, essential amino acid supplements. These are fascinating because they provide the biological equivalent of roughly 29 grams of whey protein, giving your body the raw building blocks it needs. But they completely bypass the heavy digestive load of solid food.
Oh, that's perfect.
In fact, many of them don't even technically break a fast in the traditional sense, but they still trigger the metabolic cascade we are looking for.
So let's talk about that cascade. We get the 30 grams of protein in, then we have to immediately do 30 minutes of steady state cardio, just a brisk walk or a light stationary bike ride. Why that specific combination? What is the actual biological mechanism at play there?
This is where human metabolism is so incredibly elegant. When you wake up, your body has been fasting for maybe 8 hours. Your cortisol levels are naturally peaking. This is what literally wakes you up. But cortisol is a catabolic hormone.
Right.
It breaks things down.
Okay.
If you do cardio on a completely empty stomach, your body might start breaking down muscle tissue to convert into glucose for energy.
Which is exactly what we don't want. We want to burn fat, not hard-earned muscle.
Right. So by introducing 30 grams of high-quality protein immediately, you flood your bloodstream with amino acids. This signals to the body that it doesn't need to break down muscle tissue. Furthermore, because you didn't eat carbohydrates, like a bagel or cereal, your blood sugar remains completely stable. Your insulin stays low.
And when insulin is low, the body is actually allowed to burn fat.
Exactly. Insulin is a storage hormone. When insulin is high, fat burning is locked down tight. By eating protein, keeping insulin low, and moving straight into steady-state cardiovascular exercise, your body needs fuel, looks around, sees no circulating sugar, and is forced to initiate lipid oxidation.
It taps into the reserves.
Yes, it burns stored body fat for energy, while the amino acids you just ingested form a protective shield around your muscle mass. You are selectively burning fat while preserving muscle.
That is a brilliant biological hack. But the morning primer doesn't stop there. There are a couple of environment-based non-negotiables added to this. It's not just about what you eat or the treadmill in your basement. It's about getting outside.
This is crucial.
Specifically, getting 15 minutes of morning sunlight into your eyes and taking that 20-minute walk outdoors, absolutely regardless of the weather.
This goes directly back to rejecting the zoo tank we discussed earlier. Stop saying it's too cold or too hot or that it's drizzling outside. The human body is incredibly resilient, and it craves that environmental feedback.
Yeah, if you step outside and it's freezing, your body is forced to thermoregulate. It shivers, it activates brown fat, it burns calories to keep you warm. If it's hot, you sweat, increasing your heart rate and flushing out pores. It's that natural hormetic stress again.
And beyond the temperature stress, there's a massive neurological component to getting outside. Getting that morning sunlight directly into your eyes, and we mean without sunglasses, not through a window, but direct atmospheric light, is the single most important action you can take for your circadian rhythm.
Let's break that down because people hear circadian rhythm and just think it means like what time they go to sleep, what is actually happening in the eye.
Inside your eye, you have these specialized receptors called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells.
Say that 5 times fast.
I know, right? But when natural sunlight, which has a specific lux intensity and blue light wavelength that indoor bulbs just cannot replicate, when that light hits those receptors, they send an electrical signal directly to a tiny region in your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus.
The master clock.
The master clock. That signal tells the brain the day is officially begun. It triggers the release of healthy daytime cortisol for alertness, and crucially, it starts a biological countdown timer.
The timer for sleep.
Yes, roughly 14 to 16 hours after that light exposure, your pineal gland will secrete melatonin to help you sleep. If you don't get that bright light anchor in the morning, that timer drifts, and your sleep architecture is completely compromised that night.
Everything is connected. And if you want to push that 20-minute morning walk even further, there's a recommendation to throw on a weighted vest. They mention ion gear specifically. You are adding 10 to 20 pounds of compression in weight. You are essentially tricking gravity, forcing your skeletal system and stabilizing muscles to work just a bit harder, increasing bone density without adding time to your routine.
It's an excellent efficiency tool. But we have to talk about one more element of this outdoor morning routine. It's a concept that often gets immediately dismissed as pseudoscience, but is actually deeply rooted in geophysical science, grounding or earthing.
Yes. Taking off your shoes and touching your bare feet directly to the earth. Grass, dirt, sand. I will be completely honest, when I first heard about this years ago, my eyes rolled all the way into the back of my head. It sounded like magic crystals and woo-woo internet nonsense.
And that skepticism is totally understandable. But this is not voodoo science. It is fundamental physics. The Earth itself is a giant electromagnet. It maintains a constant measurable electrical current, specifically a low Gauss current. It has a massive supply of free electrons.
Okay, so the Earth has electrons. How does that interact with my bare feet in the grass?
Well, our bodies are essentially highly complex water-based electrical systems. Every heartbeat, every single nerve impulse is electrical. As we go through our day dealing with stress, digesting processed foods, or being bombarded by electromagnetic frequencies, our bodies accumulate a positive charge. We build up free
And
radicals.
free radicals are bad, right?
Yeah, they are molecules missing an electron, and they run around damaging our cells trying to steal one.
Like biological rust.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
When you take off your rubber-soled shoes, because rubber is an insulator that stops electrical flow, and you physically connect your bare skin to the conductive earth, you complete a circuit. Your body acts as a sponge, soaking up those free, negatively charged electrons from the planet.
Yeah.
Those electrons neutralize the free radicals, which significantly drop systemic inflammation.
And this isn't just theoretical. The material points out that you can prove this instantly with a standard grounding meter. You hold the polar end of a multimeter and you plug the other end directly into the ground. While you are wearing your synthetic running shoes, the needle does nothing. You are insulated. But the absolute second you kick off the shoes and plant your bare foot in the dirt, the needle bangs all the way over.
It's wild to see.
It is a physically measurable transfer of voltage. You are literally plugging your biology into the Earth's electrical grid to discharge.
It is a profound realization. And when you stack all of this together, you wake up, you ingest the amino acids to stabilize insulin, you get the morning sunlight to set the master clock, you walk to induce lipid oxidation, and you ground your feet to neutralize electrical inflammation. I mean, you have entirely rewired your biological state before most people had even hit the snooze button for the second time.
It sets an incredible foundation. And this heavy focus on that morning protein naturally pulls us into one of the most vital, overarching conversations in this entire roadmap. The undeniable importance of protein, and more specifically, what muscle mass actually does for the human machine over a lifespan.
This is a critical pivot. We have to completely change how we view muscle. When it comes to building it, the source data is really clear. While you can survive on various protein sources, animal-based proteins consistently outperform plant-based proteins in clinical studies regarding muscle protein synthesis.
Right, because of the bioavailability and the specific amino acid profiles, particularly leucine, which is like the trigger for building muscle. The data shows that even a standard whey protein outperforms most plant-based options. But if we are talking about the ultimate platinum-tier protein source, like if you were stranded on an island and could only eat one thing to sustain optimal human function, it is unequivocally grass-fed, glass-finished meat.
The nutrient density, the mineral profile, and the fatty acid ratios in a ruminant animal that has lived its entire life eating its natural diet of grass is just biologically unmatched. But acquiring that protein is only half the equation.
Right, you have to use it.
Exactly. The fundamental rule for longevity laid out here is this. If you want to live a long, highly functional life, you must lift heavy weight. You have to subject your skeletal system and muscles to resistance training.
Because the ultimate goal of aging gracefully is to lose fat while desperately holding onto your muscle mass. And there is no second choice here. You cannot jog your way to preserving muscle. Weight-bearing exercise is the only mechanism that forces the body to retain muscle tissue as you age.
Exactly. And we need to completely redefine why that matters. We generally think of muscle in terms of aesthetics, looking good at the beach or athletic performance. But biologically, from a longevity standpoint, your muscle mass is your metabolic currency.
A metabolic currency. That is such a powerful phrase. Explain how muscle acts like currency in the body.
Think of your muscles as a massive metabolic sponge. On the surface of your muscle cells, you have these little transporters called GLUT4 receptors.
Okay, GLUT4 receptors.
When you have a healthy, dense amount of muscle mass and you stimulate it through lifting weights, those receptors come to the surface and pull glucose out of your bloodstream.
So the muscle just soaks up the sugar.
Precisely. It acts as a sink for glucose, which dramatically lowers your body's overall glycemic profile. It helps your body become incredibly sensitive to insulin. So when you consume carbohydrates, instead of that sugar circulating in your blood, causing inflammation, and eventually being stored as visceral fat around your organs, your muscles quickly absorb and utilize that energy.
Building muscle isn't just about biceps, It is literal physical armor against metabolic dysfunction and diabetes. And as we age, losing that armor is devastating. We've all seen it. The material points out that frailty is one of the greatest, most lethal risks we face in our later years. It's a condition called sarcopenia, age-related muscle wasting.
Sarcopenia is a silent killer. When you lose muscle, you lose your metabolic sync, so insulin resistance skyrockets. But you also lose your physical stability. The data specifically calls out two incredibly accurate, low-tech markers for human longevity: grip strength and thigh circumference.
Which seems almost too simple, right? Like how hard you can squeeze a device and how big your legs are dictates how long you'll live.
It sounds simple, but they are powerful proxies for your overall systemic health. If your grip strength is weak, it is a glaring indicator of central nervous system decline and systemic muscle wasting. And when older adults lose that leg strength, they lose their balance.
And that's when things go downhill fast.
Exactly. Frailty leads to a fall leads to a broken hip leads to being bedridden, which often leads to pneumonia or rapid cardiovascular decline. Muscle is your single biggest defense mechanism. Stimulate it. Feed it.
Okay, this is where I have to throw the brakes on. Then this completely contradicts everything we've been told by mainstream medicine for half a century. We are talking about eating a lot of grass-fed red meat and eggs to build this vital muscle armor. But wait, isn't saturated fat the villain? Haven't we been explicitly warned that eating red meat is going to clog our arteries and give us a heart attack?
It is a massive paradigm shift, and the data presented pushes back aggressively on that entrenched narrative. The prevailing myth that the saturated fat found in high-quality grass-fed ruminant meat is the primary driver of heart disease is crumbling under modern scientific scrutiny.
So what is the real driver?
The reality is that the real enemy of cardiovascular health, the true driver of arterial plaque and inflammation, is high glycemic sugars, refined carbohydrates, and highly processed seed oils.
So we have to stop viewing a grass-fed steak as a guilty pleasure or a heart attack on a plate and start viewing it as one of the most deeply nutrient-dense fuel sources available to human biology.
Absolutely.
But for variety, there are other phenomenal options. Eggs, which the data literally calls nature's perfect protein because they contain every nutrient required to create a living organism. Wild-caught salmon for the astaxanthin and omega-3s.
And we must be objective here and acknowledge that while animal protein is optimal, you can maintain health on a plant-based diet if you are incredibly strategic. For those avoiding animal products, the highest recommendation in the source is shelled hemp seeds.
Hemp seeds are fascinating because they are very high in protein, very low in carbohydrates, and they have the exact optimal ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids.
That ratio is crucial for managing systemic inflammation. Most modern diets are vastly overloaded with omega-6s from seed oils, which promotes inflammation. Hemp seeds balance that scale. But here is the frustrating reality for many people.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, you could be doing everything right. You could be eating the grass-fed beef or the hemp seeds, nailing your morning routine, lifting heavy weights, getting your sunlight, and you might still wake up feeling absolutely exhausted and terrible.
Yes. You have unshakable brain fog. You have sudden weight gain that defies the laws of thermodynamics based on what you're eating. You feel inflamed. So you do the responsible thing. You go to your doctor, they pull a standard blood panel. A few days later, they call and say, "Great news, your labs are totally normal, you're fine." But you know deep in your bones that you are not fine.
This is perhaps one of the most vital insights we can offer today. We have to look at the unseen invaders. Standard medical practice is excellent at detecting acute disease, like if your liver is failing or you have an acute infection, a blood test will show it. But standard panels almost entirely miss the hidden cellular toxins that destroy our quality of life. Mold, mycotoxins, parasites, hidden viruses, and heavy metals.
These invaders are the underlying culprits for so many of these mystery illnesses. If you have that deep fatigue and a total lack of response to a good diet and exercise, these contaminants might be literally sitting inside your cells, blocking the mitochondria from producing ATP, which is your cellular energy.
Exactly. Take mold, for instance. You could be living in a beautifully air-conditioned modern home, but there's toxic black mold hiding behind the drywall from a tiny leak 3 years ago. You are breathing in mycotoxins every single night.
And those don't just show up on a blood test.
No, because they don't just float in your blood. They are lipophilic, meaning they hide deep inside your fat cells and tissues. That is exactly why your standard blood test misses them completely.
So how do you actually find them?
You have to provoke them and measure how the body excretes them. The recommendation here is a specific type of clinical urine test, such as a vibrant wellness panel. These tests look for the heavy metals and mycotoxins in your urine, proving that the toxic burden exists in your tissues and your body is desperately trying to filter it out.
Okay, so you get the test. It turns out you are loaded with heavy metals from environmental exposure or mycotoxins from your office building. How do you get it out of your cells? The solution points back to one of the most ancient, culturally universal detoxification tools in human history, the sauna.
Saunas are incredible for cellular detoxification. But this raises an important question that people rarely ask. How do saunas actually work biologically? It's not just about feeling hot. We need to break down the difference between the two main modalities, dry saunas and infrared saunas.
I have always wondered about the actual scientific difference because you can't open social media without seeing an influencer sitting in a glowing red box.
The infrared sauna has become incredibly popular, and for good reason. An infrared sauna uses invisible wavelengths of light, specifically in the far infrared spectrum. And these,
Almost invisible light.
yes, invisible to the eye, but these wavelengths are unique because they penetrate deep beneath the surface of the skin. Once inside the tissue, they interact with molecules called water chromophores.
Stop right there. What is a chromophore? Break that down for me like I'm 5.
Think of a chromophore like a microscopic solar panel inside your cells. Just like chlorophyll in a plant leaf absorbs sunlight to create energy, chromophores in your body absorb specific wavelengths of light. When the infrared light hits these water chromophores, it excites them. It creates rapid molecular vibration and friction at a deep cellular level.
Oh, wow. So friction creates heat.
Exactly. So in an infrared sauna, you are literally heating up and sweating from the inside out.
Sweating from the inside out. That is fascinating.
It is highly effective for mobilizing toxins stored in deep tissue. On the other hand, you have the traditional dry sauna. This uses a stove to heat the ambient air to a very high temperature, often 180 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. This extreme ambient heat warms you from the outside in.
Is one biologically better than the other for getting the mold and metals out?
The data suggests they're both phenomenal. We don't necessarily need to crown a winner. We have centuries of epidemiological data on traditional dry saunas. Nearly every culture and religion, from Finnish bathhouses to Native American sweat lodges to Roman baths, has utilized intense heat therapy. It triggers the release of heat shock proteins, which act like biological mechanics, repairing damaged proteins inside your cells.
The data on regular, intense sauna use reducing all-cause mortality and cardiovascular disease is just staggering. But there was one highly specific, incredibly practical detail mentioned about how to sauna properly if your primary goal is detoxification. Because it turns out it's not just about sitting there and sweating, you actually have to manually intervene.
Ah, yes. The hand towel method.
Yes, this blew my mind. If you are trying to detoxify, you must take a coarse hand towel into the sauna with you. As you sit there and sweat, you must physically, aggressively wipe the sweat off your skin while you are still inside the hot room.
The mechanism here is crucial. When your body pushes those heavy metals, plastics, and mycotoxins out of your pores, they are suspended in the sweat on the surface of your skin. If you just sit there and let that sweat pool and dry, or if you wait 5 minutes until you get out to walk to the shower, your skin, which is a highly porous, absorptive organ, will simply reabsorb those toxins right back into your bloodstream.
All that effort for absolutely nothing.
Exactly. You have to physically, mechanically wipe those excreted toxins away with the towel before they can be reabsorbed.
And, of course, because you are forcing your body to dump massive amounts of fluid, aggressive hydration is absolutely mandatory. The protocol demands drinking 1 full liter of fluid, preferably water with electrolytes, for every 15 to 20 minutes you spend in the sauna.
1 liter per 15 minutes is a massive amount of water, which truly highlights just how much volume you are losing and how vital it is to continuously flush the system so your kidneys don't suffer.
Okay, so hidden toxins are a massive blind spot that traditional medicine misses. But there is an even more public, widely debated medical blind spot that we need to tackle right now. And that is how the medical establishment measures, predicts, and treats cardiovascular risk.
This is a highly nuanced and frankly sensitive topic.
Oh boy, yes it is. Let's unpack this carefully because this is where the biological data goes directly up against a very entrenched, multi-billion-dollar medical narrative. We are talking about cholesterol. For as long as I have been alive, the message has been simple and terrifying. LDL cholesterol is the bad cholesterol. If your LDL number is high on a blood test, you are in imminent danger and you need a prescription pill to lower it immediately.
The biological analysis presented in this material unequivocally calls the idea that LDL cholesterol, viewed in isolation, is inherently bad, a dangerous myth. Using LDL alone as a standalone primary marker for cardiovascular disease is simply bad science.
Now, I have to step in as the cautious voice in the room. I want to reiterate clearly and firmly that we are exploring a biological perspective presented in scientific source material. We are not doctors. This is not medical advice. And you, the listener, should always consult your physician before making any changes to your medication. We are simply examining the mechanisms of the human body as presented in the deep dive.
A vital disclaimer. Maintaining our neutral analysis, the issue at hand is that looking at LDL in a vacuum ignores the complex mechanics of the cardiovascular system. Cannot just look at one number, you have to look at the entire lipid panel and, most importantly, the ratios. Specifically, you must look at your LDL in relation to your triglycerides.
Okay, I want to use an analogy here to see if I have this right. Imagine your blood vessels are a highway. For decades, we've been told that LDL cholesterol particles are like a fleet of rogue, evil vehicles trying to crash and clog up the road.
Right, the standard view.
But the reality is that LDL particles are actually the ambulances. They are responding to a site of injury to patch up damage in the artery wall. The real danger, the things causing the damage, are the triglycerides and the high blood sugar. Those are the drunk drivers and the massive potholes destroying the highway.
That is an exceptionally accurate metaphor. Cholesterol is a vital repairing molecule. The damage to your endothelial lining, the inner wall of your blood vessels, is caused by systemic inflammation, high insulin, and elevated triglycerides, which are the actual circulating blood fats primarily driven by excess carbohydrates and sugar. When the artery wall is damaged by those drunk drivers, the body sends the LDL ambulances to patch the wound.
But standard medicine sees the ambulance at the scene of the crash, blames the ambulance for the accident, and prescribes a drug to pull all the ambulances off the road. Meanwhile, the drunk drivers, the sugar and triglycerides, are still out there causing havoc.
Which is exactly why the source points out that to get a true picture of your actual risk, you need to measure the balance. You look at HDL, LDL, and VLDL, very low-density lipoprotein, and weigh them against those triglycerides. The data shows that the lower your triglycerides are, which is achieved through diet and exercise, the better your overall cholesterol profile operates.
They even cited historical mortality data from the life insurance industry, which is the ultimate unbiased source because insurance companies only care about actuarial math.
The math doesn't lie.
The data showed that if a patient had elevated LDL cholesterol but very low triglycerides, they actually outlived the standard life expectancy models. Having high LDL wasn't a death sentence. When paired with low blood fat and low inflammation, it was actually a marker for a longer life.
Which completely inverts the standard advice. If you want a more accurate prediction of cardiovascular risk, you have to look deeper. The material recommends specific markers like lipo-A and ApoB.
Explain those, because those sound like advanced chemistry terms. What is ApoB?
To continue your highway analogy, if cholesterol is the cargo or the passengers, ApoB is the actual vehicle or the boat carrying that cargo through your bloodstream. The number of boats, the ApoB particles, is actually a much stronger predictor of arterial plaque buildup than the total amount of cholesterol passengers they're carrying.
Because more boats mean a higher likelihood of one crashing into the artery wall.
Exactly. You also want to measure C-reactive protein, which is a highly sensitive marker for systemic inflammation. If C-reactive protein is high, your highway is full of potholes, and the cholesterol is going to be forced to intervene.
So if you really want to reduce your risk of a heart attack, you shouldn't be obsessing over starving yourself of healthy fats to lower your LDL. You should be aggressively targeting your insulin and your glycemic profile to stop the damage in the first place. The specific targets mentioned are aiming for a hemoglobin A1C, which measures your 3-month average blood sugar of 5.3 or lower, and keeping your fasting insulin in the single digits.
But changing your diet to lower insulin is hard. It requires breaking the aggressive pursuit of comfort. And unfortunately, the standard medical reaction in our modern system is instant over-medicalization. The very second someone presents with marginally high LDL, regardless of their triglycerides, they are handed a prescription for a statin drug.
Just, here, take this pill for the rest of your life.
And remaining completely impartial here, the material does not condemn statin drugs entirely. There are genetic conditions, like familial hypercholesterolemia, where statins are absolutely life-saving.
Right.
The warning is strictly against their knee-jerk overprescription as a primary preventative measure for the general population. especially when handed out with zero mandates for dietary or lifestyle changes.
And the long-term consequences of just suppressing cholesterol production with a pill can be severe. The brain is quite literally made of cholesterol. It forms the myelin sheaths that protect our neurons. The material highlighted a deeply unsettling observation regarding this.
Yes. In their extensive data modeling, they found a startling correlation. One of the markers used to determine if an individual had a high propensity for early onset cognitive decline, Alzheimer's or dementia, was long-term, decades-long statin use.
That is terrifying. By forcefully pulling cholesterol out of the body to quote-unquote protect the heart, we might be starving the brain of the exact lipid molecules it needs to maintain memory and cognitive function.
The correlation is significant. And what is even more striking is the observation that for some patients who were exhibiting early cognitive issues, when they worked with their physicians to safely discontinue the long-term statin use, they often experienced a positive rebounding effect on their memory and cognition.
Again,
Yeah.
we are not telling anyone to throw their medication in the trash. But this demands that you have a much more educated, demanding conversation with your doctor. Ask for the ApoB test. Ask for your fasting insulin. Address the root cause, the lifestyle mechanisms, and the diet, rather than just masking the symptom with a drug.
It is about taking ownership of your biological data.
Absolutely. So if we aren't going to rely on a pharmacy drive-thru to fix every slightly off-kilter lab result, how should we be thinking about the massive, confusing, multi-billion-dollar world of over-the-counter supplements? Because frankly, the supplement aisle is a total jungle, and most of it feels like a scam.
It is a jungle, and it is an industry driven largely by aggressive marketing, fancy packaging, and influencer endorsements rather than actual biology. The golden rule presented here for biohacking your health through supplementation is simple. Supplement for documented deficiency, not for the sake of an Instagram ad. Or, as they bluntly put it, test, don't guess.
I had to laugh out loud at the response in the Q&A when the expert was asked about seeing people who take 47 different supplements every morning just because they heard a podcaster mention them. The interviewer asked, do you stage an intervention or just back away slowly?
It is a humorous visual, but it points to a very real, very dangerous problem. People are swallowing massive handfuls of capsules every single morning, combining herbs, synthetic vitamins, and extracts with absolutely no idea how those compounds are interacting, what they're doing to their liver enzymes, or if they're even absorbing them.
The advice is brilliant. Ask yourself, what specific biological mechanism am I supplementing for? If you can't point to a specific deficiency in your body and explain how that pill fixes it, you probably don't need it. You are just creating extremely expensive urine.
The only way to actually know what your body needs is to generate a biological roadmap. Standard blood work is a good start, but the ultimate tool recommended here is a genetic methylation test.
Okay, let's pause and define this because methylation is one of those buzzwords that gets thrown around, but very few people understand it. What is a methylation test and what is methylation?
I will use an analogy. Imagine your body is a massive construction site, and the raw vitamins you get from food or cheap supplements are the instruction manuals for the workers. Methylation is the biological process of taking a raw nutrient and converting it into a usable, active form that the cell can actually read.
So it's like translating the instruction manual.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, a massive portion of the population, up to 40%, has genetic mutations, most famously the MTHFR gene mutation. If you have this mutation, your body lacks the enzyme required to translate that manual. You can swallow all the raw folic acid or standard B vitamins in the world, but your cells cannot read them. They just float around in your blood, causing issues until you excrete them. A genetic methylation test tells you exactly where your translation errors are.
So once you have that roadmap, what does a smart foundational supplement routine look like? Assuming you've done the testing and weeded out the junk, what is the baseline? The material actually shared a personal, highly consistent morning stack.
Yes. The foundation begins with all 9 essential amino acids first thing in the morning, which ties back perfectly to the 30-30-30 method we discussed. You provide the raw building blocks for neurotransmitters and muscle. Alongside that, a methylated multivitamin.
Because the methylated version has already been translated in a lab, your body doesn't need to do the conversion work. The nutrients are immediately bioavailable, even if you have that MTHFR gene mutation.
Exactly. It bypasses the genetic roadblock entirely. The next component of this morning stack is hydrogen water, specifically dropping an H2 tab into a glass of water.
Now, I have to admit, when I first read hydrogen water, my pseudoscience alarm bells went off again. Water is already H2O. It already has hydrogen. Why are we adding more, and how does this actually work?
It sounds redundant, but it is biochemically fascinating. When you drop these specific magnesium-based tablets into water, they release pure molecular hydrogen gas. Molecular hydrogen is the smallest molecule in the entire universe. Because it is so unimaginably tiny, it can easily cross the blood-brain barrier and penetrate deep inside your mitochondria, the powerhouses of your cells.
And what does it do once it gets in there?
It acts as an incredibly selective antioxidant. It specifically targets and neutralizes only the most toxic, damaging free radicals inside the cell, while leaving the beneficial signaling molecules completely alone. It massively reduces systemic inflammation, and from a subjective standpoint, people report that it feels like turning the lights on in their brain regarding clarity and energy.
Wow. Okay, I stand corrected on hydrogen water.
Hmm.
And the final piece of this morning hydration stack is mineral salt. Not the standard chemically bleached white table salt that comes in a cardboard cylinder, but high-quality, unrefined mineral salt. They specifically called out Baja Gold sea salt.
The distinction is vital. Standard table salt is heavily processed, stripped of everything but sodium and chloride, and often contains anti-caking agents like aluminum. A pure mineral salt, like Baja Gold, is harvested from pristine waters and naturally dehydrated by the sun. It contains roughly 91 distinct trace minerals and significantly less pure sodium.
You just add a healthy pinch to your morning water, but why? What do those trace minerals actually do?
Those trace minerals, magnesium, potassium, zinc, selenium, they are the physical spark plugs for thousands of enzymatic and electrical reactions in the human body. Because we filter our modern drinking water through reverse osmosis, we strip out all the natural earth minerals. If you drink pure stripped water, it actually pulls minerals out of your cells. Adding a pinch of mineral salt remineralizes the water, allowing it to properly hydrate your cells and conduct the electrical impulses your nervous system relies on.
It is such a simple, cheap intervention with a massive biological return. Okay, so we have the morning routine dialed, we are avoiding processed foods, and we have the supplements targeted. But let's be real for a second. We are humans, not robots. What about the psychological side of eating? What about cravings? Are we just never allowed to eat anything sweet or comforting ever again?
The approach here is highly realistic and sustainable. It is not about ascetic deprivation. It is about intelligence.
Yeah.
It's about satisfying the psychological craving while completely swapping the biological impact. You can eat sweet, comforting foods as long as they don't trigger that massive, destructive influence spike we talked about earlier.
Oh, I have to share the Ben & Jerry's hack that was provided in this Q&A because I am absolutely making this tonight. If you are sitting on the couch craving a pint of ice cream, instead of spiking your blood sugar into the stratosphere, you do this. You take 5 to 10 tablespoons of organic light coconut cream. You throw in a generous fistful of crushed nuts, pecans, walnuts, almonds. You add a pinch of that Baja Gold sea salt we just discussed to hit the salt craving, and you sweeten it with a packet of pure monk fruit.
Monk fruit is a phenomenal tool. It is a natural, non-caloric sweetener derived from a melon, and crucially, it has a glycemic index of 0. It does not spike blood sugar or trigger an insulin release.
Exactly. You mix all that up in a bowl, you put it in the freezer to get it ice cold, and it becomes a masterclass in biohacking a craving. You get the high, healthy fats from the coconut cream, the satisfying crunch from the nuts, the sweet taste from the monk fruit, and zero sugar crash. The expert even admitted to having cheat meals, which I found so refreshing. They have a private chef who makes a cake using almond flour, coconut sugar, and raw cacao, and their absolute ultimate Achilles heel, a classic piece of carrot cake.
It perfectly humanizes the entire process. You can have the occasional stray meal or indulge in carrot cake, provided your daily foundational baseline is solid. However, there is a massive caveat to everything we have discussed today. All the targeted supplements, all the clever diet hacks, the expensive saunas, the perfect grass-fed whole food meals.
None of it matters if you ignore this next part.
Right, all of it means absolutely nothing if you ignore the ultimate foundational pillar of human biology.
Which brings us to the final and perhaps most critical element of this deep dive, sleep and breath work. The material refers to sleep as the ultimate human superpower. And yet, as a modern society, we constantly bully it. We treat sleep like a bank account that we can just endlessly overdraw from, assuming we can catch up on the weekends.
And we pay a terrible, compounding biological interest rate on that debt. Sleep is not a passive state where you just turn off. It is an intensely active biological period. When you enter deep sleep, a process called glymphatic clearance occurs.
What is glymphatic clearance?
Their brain cells actually shrink in physical size by up to 60%. This allows cerebrospinal fluid to rush in and literally power wash the brain, clearing out metabolic waste products like amyloid plaques.
And amyloid plaques are the exact proteins associated with Alzheimer's and dementia.
Precisely. If you cut your sleep short, You interrupt the wash cycle. The plaques build up. Sleep is also when your body synthesizes critical hormones like testosterone and human growth hormone, and when muscle tissue repair actually happens. Improving sleep naturally is the single most critical health intervention a human being can make.
So how do we stop bullying our sleep? How do we fix it? The material gives a very clear, uncompromising list of behavioral and environmental changes. Number one, and apparently the most impactful, establishing a consistent bedtime. They reference data from millions of users on Whoop fitness straps, which shows that going to bed and waking up at the exact same time, even on weekends, is the biggest determining factor in long-term sleep quality.
This brings everything full circle back to the circadian rhythm. Remember that 15 minutes of morning sunlight sets the timer. The sunlight you absorb at 7 a.m. directly dictates your pineal gland's ability to naturally produce and release a massive wave of melatonin at 10 p.m. That natural endogenous melatonin production is infinitely more effective for achieving all 4 stages of sleep than swallowing synthetic sleep medications.
Because sleep medications are essentially just sedatives, right? They knock you unconscious, but they don't produce the restorative sleep architecture.
Exactly. You are chemically sedated, not sleeping. Environmental control is the next massive lever. Your bedroom must be treated like a cave. It needs to be cold dropping. Your core body temperature is a biological requirement for initiating deep sleep, and it needs to be pitch black.
They highly recommend an incredibly simple intervention. An under $10 all-cotton sleep mask. Wrap it around your head and block out every single photon of ambient light.
Light pollution in modern bedrooms is a massive disruptor. Your skin actually has photoreceptors. Even if your eyes are closed, if a street light is shining through the window, or if there's a tiny blue LED glowing on your smoke detector or your television, your brain registers that light and suppresses melatonin production.
And the absolute biggest culprit of light pollution and anxiety are phones. The rule here is strict. Get off all screens at least an hour before bed, unplug electronics near the bed, and crucially, put your smartphone at least 6 feet away from your head while you sleep.
Creating that electronic-free, EMF-free sanctuary allows the nervous system to finally downregulate. But let's be honest, even with a cold, pitch-black room and no phone, many people still lie awake staring at the ceiling because their mind is racing with the stress of the day.
Yeah, the 2 a.m. doom spiral.
Right. And this is where the intentional application of breath work becomes a critical tool for survival.
This is where we take control of the autonomic nervous system. The specific technique recommended for that insomnia is called box breathing.
Box breathing is a highly effective, neurologically grounding technique utilized by everyone from Navy SEALs to clinical therapists. The mechanics are simple, rhythmic, and incredibly powerful. You inhale deeply through your nose for a count of 4 seconds. You hold that breath at the top for 4 seconds. You exhale slowly through your mouth for 4 seconds. And you hold empty at the bottom for 4 seconds.
4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold. A perfect box. Why does that work?
It is a mechanical hack for the vagus nerve. By controlling the breath and elongating the exhale, you are literally forcing your autonomic nervous system to switch gears. You force it out of the sympathetic state, the high-stress fight-or-flight mode, and you lock it into the parasympathetic state, which is the rest and digest mode required for sleep.
And the material pairs this physical breathing with a beautiful psychological visualization. As you take that 4-second inhale, you actively visualize pulling all the stressful thoughts, the emails, the anxieties of your day down out of your brain and into your lungs. And as you execute that 4-second exhale, you literally visualize breathing that dark energy completely out of your physical body.
It is a wonderful active way to detach and process anxiety. But the roadmap also utilizes breathwork on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, not just to sleep, but to wake up, energize, and alter blood chemistry.
Yes, the morning breathwork protocol. The expert mentioned practicing a Wim Hof style of hyperoxygenation breathwork every single morning for years, never missing a day.
Physiological effects of this practice are intense and transformative.
The details on how to do it were very specific. You take 30 long, slow, deep inhales entirely through the nose, pulling the air deep into the belly, and then you exhale by just letting the air fall out of your mouth, as if you were exhaling through an imaginary straw. You don't force the air out, you just let it escape. You do that 30 times. At the end of the 30th exhale, you hold your breath on empty for as long as you possibly can. When you finally have the urge to breathe, you take one massive deep breath in, pause for 15 seconds, and release.
They recommend starting with 3 rounds of 5 breaths if you're a beginner, and slowly working your way up to 3 full rounds of 30 breaths. Doing that practice outside, with your skin exposed to the cold morning air and the sunlight, radically alters your state.
What is actually happening in the blood when you do that? Because people report feeling tingling, lightheadedness, and massive surges of energy.
You are intentionally inducing a controlled state of hypoxia low oxygen during the breath hold. This triggers an acute release of adrenaline and epinephrine, which wakes you up far better than coffee. Simultaneously, the rapid breathing blows off massive amounts of carbon dioxide, which actually temporarily shifts the pH of your blood, making it more alkaline. This reduces systemic inflammation and floods your brain with oxygen. It is a life-changing, empowering practice once it becomes a habit.
Which perfectly aligns with the grand finale of this Q&A, where the expert boils everything down to the three big non-negotiables for longevity. If you ignore the supplements, ignore the saunas, and only do three things for the rest of your life. Number 1, protect your sleep. Number 2, eat a whole food diet completely absent of processed garbage. And number 3, daily mobility, lifting weights, and walking outside.
If you master those three foundational pillars, you have won 90% of the biological battle. The rest is just optimization.
Well, this has been an incredibly dense, profound journey through a truly provocative stack of scientific information. We have covered a massive amount of ground today. We started by completely redefining what aging is, realizing that we need to actively reject the zoo tank and step out of the aggressive pursuit of comfort. We learned the exact mechanisms of how to rewire our metabolic state every morning with the 30-30-30 method, amino acids, and direct sunlight.
We established the reality that muscle is a metabolic currency, a vital sink for glucose that must be fed with high-quality protein and stimulated with heavy weights to prevent the devastating decline of sarcopenia. We uncovered the unseen world of heavy metals and mycotoxins and detailed exactly how infrared saunas and mechanical towel wiping can force them out of our tissues.
We tackled the deeply nuanced, often misunderstood truth about cardiovascular health, recognizing that LDL cholesterol is just the ambulance responding to the scene, and that the real fire we need to put out is the high triglycerides and insulin. We built a foundational roadmap for intelligent supplementation demanding genetic testing instead of blind guessing. And finally, we elevated sleep to its rightful place as our ultimate human superpower, backed by the neurological control of intentional breathwork. It is a completely holistic, uncompromising view of how to take control of your own biology.
It is a phenomenal blueprint for human optimization. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over, building directly on that fascinating concept of grounding and physics we discussed earlier. The material established that the Earth has a constant low-Gauss electrical current, and that our bodies physically discharge inflammatory positive charge when we make bare skin contact. So consider this profound evolutionary reality. If human biology evolved over millions of years to literally share a continuous unbroken electrical circuit with the surface of this planet, what are the long-term, unseen physiological consequences of spending our entire modern existence completely insulated from it? We live every moment in thick rubber-soled shoes. We walk exclusively on synthetic carpets and asphalt. We sleep elevated on synthetic mattresses in high-rises hundreds of feet in the air. Are we not just metaphorically disconnected from nature, but literally, physically starving our cellular biology of a fundamental electrical nutrient?
Wow, starving ourselves of an electrical nutrient. That visual is absolutely going to stick with me. It just goes to show how far our modern obsession with comfort has pushed us away from our natural biological design. So to you listening, as you step back into your day, the goal isn't to be overwhelmed. The goal isn't to completely change your entire life overnight. Take just one single piece of this roadmap. Maybe it's committing to that 20-minute morning walk regardless of the rain. Maybe it's figuring out how to hit that 30 grams of protein the second you wake up. Or maybe it's just remembering to physically wipe the sweat off your skin the next time you step into a sauna. Step out of the aggressive pursuit of comfort, take ownership of your biology, and start building your ultimate self today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We will see you next time.